My heroic dose mushroom experience was one of the most strange and interesting trips I've ever had. It actually took me some time to integrate this experience fully. I would even say that I'm still integrating it now. It's hard to know what to make of some of these experiences. I'm sure some of you can relate. There's often this feeling of, what the hell just happened? And you don't know exactly what to make of it. I'm going to share with you exactly how I integrated. Welcome back to my channel. What's up, y'all? If you're new, I do deep dives into the content of psychedelic experiences. Visionary experiences are one of the most interesting things that can happen to you as a human being. I'm so endlessly fascinated with all of this, so this channel is meant to create a place where other people who are just as interested can gravitate towards. The experience I'm going to be talking about is based on my very first mushroom trip report video. It's also the most viewed video on my channel. If you want to see that first, I have a full version on my channel, and I also made a shorter version of the story if you want to check that out. I'm going to put both of those links in the description. If you would like to read my experience, I have a free ebook version of it too. So many different things happened in this trip. One of the first things that happened was the experience of speaking to the mushroom. I felt like as an American, I was cut off from my ancestors, and I wanted to know more about that. I wanted to develop a connection with the ancestors that I feel like we're lacking in our culture. I admired the fact that many indigenous cultures in the Americas are connected to and honor their ancestors, especially the psychedelically inclined cultures. So that was the question that I posed to the mushroom. I said, how do I know my ancestors? And I got an immediate answer which said, their art. It also opened my mind to the idea that our ancestors are not just genetic. Since we live in a culture of ideas, the people whose ideas we build upon are also our ancestors. So as a musician, the artists and bands that inspired me are also ancestors in this sense. The way I integrate this part of the experience is that I honor the roots of my inspiration, and I do a little musicology, and I go digging even deeper and look at the roots, the inspiration of my inspirations. For example, many of the artists that I look up to from the 60s and 70s were inspired by Black American musicians of the 40s and 50s, like the blues, the original bluesmen. People like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who was like the founder of rock and roll. And a few months ago, I was at an online meetup thing that's hosted by Eric Davis, where he hosts a meditation and kind of a small talk on a subject. He actually opened my mind to the idea that the beat generation of the 50s, like the beat poets and the hippies that came after them, are a type of ancestors for us in the American counterculture today. They are the tradition which we draw from, and I never really thought about it like that. But now I consider people like Jack Kerouac my ancestor, and it feels nice to be connected to something that runs back, you know? Like the Beats were the original rebellious kids who were smoking weed and listening to jazz. The other thing is considering the history of art. Probably the oldest visionary art piece is this famous image of the Mushroom Man. It was depicted in Terence McKenna's book. I believe it was Food of the Gods. And you see this mushroom man with all these mushrooms sprouting out of his body, and his face looks almost something like a bee. So it's implying some kind of connection to honey, possibly psilocybin mushrooms, or some kind of shaman figure. These were our ancestors, and their use of psychedelics and their visionary art goes back to at least 9,000 years ago. Through viewing this ancient art, this is the closest we can get to living the experience of our ancient ancestors. So by connecting to these artworks and connecting to the inspirations of my inspirations and people like the Beat Generation, and recognizing all of that as my ancestry, I can feel more connected to my ancestors and integrate this part of my experience. The other thing that came up during my trip was alchemy. I saw a cartoon Merlin, and it looked like he was toiling away creating the Philosopher's Stone. I got the intuition that creating this Philosopher's Stone was still somehow the goal of humanity, and specifically the goal of artists. I also saw the stone he was creating, and it looked like the human soul captured in an object. It also looked like a unique logo that suits the individual and represents their uniqueness. Like it represented something universal but also unique. This cartoon representation of the alchemist and the stone gave me the impression that alchemy and the attempt to create this stone was actually a childlike or primitive attempt at something we should still be aiming for. I didn't think too much about alchemy prior to this experience. I probably fell asleep listening to Terence McKenna talking about it one time, but I really gave it no importance until this vision happened. It didn't even seem particularly interesting when I was hearing about it from Terence before this experience. It just seemed like a lot of dense information that I didn't see really as relevant yet. That's what psychedelics do for me a lot of the time. They take some information that's already in my brain and then they highlight it and it puts it right in front of me and it says, this is what you need to be looking at. This is what's important. And so was the case with alchemy. I had no interest in it prior, and then after this experience, I knew it was something I needed to look into further. Alchemy is a process of mental transformation as it is physical transformation with the chemicals and things they're working onto. The idea is that the psyche is projected onto this external process in the alchemist lab, and also that creating the stone was some form of refining the alchemist's own soul. The idea is to transform crude matter, or prima materia as it's called, into higher ethereal forms. And this is also what's happening to the human soul. It's like we're taking the base levels of existence and refining it to achieve transcendence. This is all tied into the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. I believe the Philosopher's Stone is a psychic object. I have seen it twice in my life. I learned more about alchemy and integrating this part of my trip by reading Psychology and Alchemy by Carl Jung. He talks about a lot of the things that I'm mentioning here, and this book was also a huge influence to Terence McKenna. This concept of alchemy also ties into art and ancestors. I got the sense that art and music were a type of alchemy. Their ultimate goal is transcendence and liberation of the human soul. It also connects to our ancestors because alchemy is an ancient practice that goes back to Egypt, China, and the Arab world. In Renaissance Europe, all of these ideas were fused into an early form of chemistry. My ancestors lived in Europe at this time, and my suspicion is that at least one of them practiced alchemy. So it would be wild if the mushroom actually showed me this alchemy in response to my original question about wanting to know my ancestors. Even if it wasn't genetic ancestors, these ideas are the ideas of my ancestors. I know that reading about alchemy helped me integrate this part of my experience because it helped me understand the meaning of what I was looking at and take it to the next level. I eventually saw the Philosopher's Stone again during a meditation, and I feel like it was refined by my new understanding. This is a process of a lifetime. One of the other things that I saw was like a space telescope, and I was scanning the sky looking for signs of alien life. And it looked a lot like the James Webb Telescope, which was recently launched, but it was a little different. It was a series of hexagons stacked. It was like a neon green hexagon that went like this, boom, 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 boom. And that was what I was looking through to discover alien life. I was seeing flashes of red, green, and blue when I was looking at these various stars, and I got this sense that this was indicating the abundance of life in the universe. This experience was in 2013, and the James Webb Telescope, which looks very similar to what I saw, launched this past December in 2021. The launch was successful, and in the following months we'll be getting the first images back from the James Webb Telescope, and we'll get to see what amazing discoveries it's going to make. It is currently humanity's furthest seeing eyes in the cosmos. This is allowing us to see further back into time than we've ever seen before. which is really profound and makes us think about the nature of our existence. So if this telescope discovers life out there, you heard it from me first. Some guy who hallucinated the future on mushrooms. I also felt a profound connection to this symbol of hexagons. I want to create a woodwork piece with some lights behind it to recreate that neon glow and put it up in my room and so you can see it in the background. I would also like to make this kind of like a logo for the channel, because I also think it's a great kind of symbol, because it was like you're searching through this telescope, and I think that ties in with this whole find the others thing, like you're finding the others through this telescope, and maybe put it on a t-shirt or something. It looked really cool. The end of my trip actually got pretty difficult and scary. I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable and overwhelmed, and I was ready for this super intense trip to end already. I wanted to call my friends to have their company, but I felt like I couldn't call them. Something inside of me felt like I hadn't been a present and loyal enough friend to deserve their presence. I just felt like I hadn't been a good enough friend to them, like I wasn't pulling my weight. That might have been a little extreme, but it was a good wake-up call. I have since integrated that by being a better friend and watering the plants in the garden that are your personal relationships. Integration is probably the most important part of psychedelic experiences. Anybody can have these experiences and even taste a taste of enlightenment, but it's up to you to actually put these things into practice and to integrate what you've learned or dig deeper into what you've been exposed to during a psychedelic trip. Otherwise, it's just something weird that happened to you and you didn't grow from it. Psychedelics don't do all the work for you, they just show you the way. And integration is also a way of showing respect to these profound substances and the experiences that they produce. I'm not trying to be preachy here either, because I am not perfect in this category. In fact, it took me years to do all of this necessary integration. I'm sure a lot of you still have some experiences from way back that you could still integrate a little more in your life. It may not be the most exciting part of being a psychonaut, but I promise you it will help you tremendously in your personal growth and spiritual development. I hope you gained something from this video, and I would love to hear from you too. Has there been anything that you integrated or failed to integrate from your trips? We can all learn from each other by sharing our experiences and how we integrate them. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.